the requirement to use a minimal but sufficient number of animals in an experiment makes intuitive sense. But to broaden that argument to not allow replication of experiments might actually be harmful for the progress in the biomedical sciences. And I just want to give you a few examples where this might be the case. So for example, many labs actually do methodological things a little differently. They might use slightly different cages, bedding, and things like that, or they might handle the animals differently. One caretaker might pick up their mice by the base of the tail with their hand, another might do it with a forceps. And so there's a lot of environmental differences that actually might contribute to different outcomes in the experiment. And it's important to be able to pick up those differences and to see how generally applicable the results of one study is compared to another study. Now, another example is, for example, scientific fraud. It's not something we like to talk about, but just recently a US scientist was sentenced to 57 months in prison for falsifying HIV vaccine data. And this is described by Reardon, 2015. So fraud does happen. I think it's still rare, but it does happen. But how would you be able to detect it if you were not able to replicate experiments? There's also a possibility that the person or the group of scientists who published the research first didn't give enough detail about the methodology used for another group to be able to successfully replicate it. Now, all these things can be quite wasteful, especially when certain labs have tried to replicate data from another group for years and have been unsuccessful because of some methodological issues that they weren't aware of, or plain scientific fraud, which is rare. Now, another reason to replicate some of your work is in studies, for example, that we do. Now, we know the basic differences between a compulsive-like and a non-compulsive-like mice, the big nest builders and the small nest builders. But when we do a drug study to see what the effect of the drug is on the mice, we always include a control group that, for example, includes the saline vehicle that we use to dissolve the drug in. Now, you can argue, why do you do that if you already know what the basic differences between these lines are? But that is inherent in the research design. You always have to have a control group present. Now, you could also include another control group where you use a drug that you already know the effect of. And if you weren't able to do that, you wouldn't be able to evaluate what the new drug's effects are compared to drugs that you've already tested. Now, of course, researchers and institutional animal care and use committees take all these issues into consideration when designing and approving new studies with animals. Now, simply repeating an experiment just because you feel like it is unacceptable. However, to repeat an experiment because you have scientific reasons that make you believe that previously published research has neglected a certain crucial component or was completely misinterpreted, then you'll usually be able to replicate that study because you're likely to gain new scientific knowledge.